The man greedily licked the frost inside the fridge, until he had licked every last bit of ice clean. Only then did the dying thirst in him feel slightly relieved. Then he took out some expired biscuits, scraped off the moldy parts, and spread on some expensive caviar. But that bit of food was nowhere near enough to fill his stomach, so he scooped out the ornamental fish from the aquarium, then chopped it into a meat paste, rolled it into balls, and swallowed them raw with beer. Only then did he feel a little bit full. Nick used to be a top-tier thief. That day he broke into a famous collector's home. Without hesitation he looted every valuable painting in the mansion, but just as he was about to leave, his teammate's mistake caused him to enter the wrong code. The security system immediately activated. Every door in the room was instantly locked. He quickly called for backup, but his teammate only said "You're on your own," then cut off all communication with Nick. To avoid attracting the police, Nick violently smashed the control panel, then cut the wires to the alarm speaker. Only then did the system finally go silent. But the most urgent thing now was to escape. Nick went to the door. Seeing the solid wood door gave him an idea. He grabbed a knife and began stabbing it repeatedly. Halfway through he got thirsty and went to the kitchen, only to find that the faucet had no water at all. Then he opened the fridge, but there were only a few sad cans inside, so he went back to desperately chisel at the door, only to discover a thick steel plate behind the wood. That completely crushed his hope. With no other choice he lay down on the floor and fell asleep. Early the next morning, Nick heard the roar of an airplane outside the window, but inside this sealed room, there wasn't a single sound. Then he suddenly noticed some stone artworks. He picked up a stone and stood on the bed. The stone got smashed, but the glass was still intact. Just as Nick was out of ideas, he suddenly noticed the glass skylight above his head. If he could remove the glass he might be able to escape, so he got right to it. First he dragged every cabinet and table that could add height, and placed them under the skylight. Then he removed the rope from a chair, used the rope to tie the tables and cabinets together. Finally he stood on the very top, but he was still far from reaching the skylight. Nick had no choice but to rest for a bit. Then he saw on the surveillance screen, a girl eating delicious food in the stairwell, that almost made him cry from hunger. If he didn't get out soon he'd starve to death. So he took action again, used a bronze statue to pry open a locked door. Inside were all kinds of dog food, and one huge steak. Then he suddenly heard the sound of running water outside. It turned out to be a timed watering system for the plants. Now his food and water problems were finally solved. That night, he suddenly saw a janitor on the monitor, cleaning near the front door. Nick was overjoyed. He quickly got dressed and rushed to the door. The man raised a vase high, smashed it hard onto the ground, then picked out 2 pieces of broken glass from it, wrapped them carefully with tape, and made a pair of makeshift sunglasses. Finally he climbed onto the frame he had built himself, and started chipping away at the cement around the skylight bit by bit. The reason he did all this was because while stealing paintings from the mansion, he accidentally entered the wrong security code, which caused all the doors to instantly lock. He ended up trapped inside the mansion. To escape alive, he had no choice but to try breaking through the skylight, but to his surprise, there were screws embedded in the cement holding the skylight in place. This threw Nick into deep despair, but that clearly wasn't enough to stop a top-tier thief. He kicked a chair to break it, then carved a groove into the wood using a small knife. Soon he had crafted a simple wrench, but the moment he gave it a twist, the wood cracked right away. Clearly this method wasn't going to work. At this point Nick was starving. He stared at the ornamental fish, drooling. He simply scooped one out, chopped it into fish paste, rolled the meat into balls, then downed them with premium vodka. Finally he had a full meal. With his stomach full he got back to work. Soon he successfully removed the first screw, but the road ahead was still tough. All his food was gone. The bathtub was filled with his waste. The mansion by now was in total chaos. He scribbled all over the owner's portrait, to show off what little artistic spirit he had. Every now and then he acted spooky, to ease his nerves and anxiety. One day he pried open the owner's wardrobe, and found a hidden panel inside. He pulled the wooden board aside, and discovered a narrow hallway. He carefully followed the hallway to the end, but suddenly it looked like he saw something terrifying. He scrambled out in a panic, as if there was something horrifying inside. But driven by curiosity, he gathered his courage and went back in. Only then did he see clearly that there was a corpse hidden in the secret room. But the strange thing was, the body didn't smell like decay at all. Nick reached out to touch it, and realized it was just a rubber dummy. Turned out it was a false alarm. There really wasn't anything valuable in the secret room. What mattered most now was escaping the mansion. But just as he unscrewed one of the screws, he slipped and fell. But that fall happened to let him spot the smoke detector on the ceiling. He tore up some paper and placed it in a bowl, then used a magnifying glass to ignite the paper scraps. Next he lit a makeshift torch and held it up to the smoke detector. Sure enough, the trick worked. A heavy downpour started inside the room. Nick rushed to the door, thinking the fire would trigger the automatic release, but it turned out the trick didn't work at all. Once again he fell into deep despair, but luckily he didn't give up. After who knows how long, he finally removed all the screws from the skylight, then left a message for the homeowner at the door. Sorry for messing up your house. This may be a home to you, but for me it was nothing short of a prison. Don't thank me for what I did in your room. It was simply what I had to do. Master Thief Nick was here. Don't miss me. In the end, Nick stepped onto the wooden frame he had built and successfully escaped the cage that had tortured him for an entire month.